Frank Bonada here, and with me today is Kyle Dimond. You will likely know his work from VMTV, Sportskeeda, all of that. We're going to be breaking down UFC 286, Edwards versus Usman 3, looking at the main card. Kyle, thank you for coming on today. How are you? How are you feeling about this upcoming event?
I'm good, man. Thank you for having me. I feel like this card has been weird because we had such high expectations for it when we
Mm,
first started getting it put together. So I think that's kind of overshadowed some of it, but I can't look past the fact that we have a title fight in England. Like that alone is brilliant, but also there's some really great fights on here. So I think that maybe it might have been overshadowed a little bit by the expectations that we were kind of told we were going to get something
mm.
extra special, but I still think it's a really great card and there's loads to be excited for on here. So
Yeah, I agree. It's a strange one, isn't it? Because we could have had a stadium. We could have had. I mean, it broke my heart that Arnold Allen had the injury and wasn't able to have the Max Holloway fight on here. But I mean, let's not kick a gift horse in the mouth or whatever the saying is. We've got Justin Gaethje, we've got Rafael Fiziev, we've got Gunnar Nelson, who's become a staple of these English cards. We've got a lot of big names. Marvin Vettori, former title challenger. Yeah, and let's get straight into that main event. I think Leon Edwards versus Kamaru Usman 3. Um, Usman coming in as a favorite, I think probably fairly so.
yeah,
He's had, if you look at rounds that they've won, he's got what, 6 rounds over 1.5 to Edwards. Like,
yeah.
yeah. But the one thing that I've spoken to quite a lot of fighters about this card, about this fight in particular, and the one that, well, it's a straight divide. You got the US guys who are all backing Usman, all the UK guys or
Yeah.
European guys even are backing Edwards. But one of the big things people backing Edwards are saying it's not at elevation anymore. We saw how well he did in that first round at Salt Lake City. Even took Usman down, which was sensational. Um, was it cardio or was it skill that saw him lose the next few rounds and almost come up short in the rematch?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? I feel like every time I talk about that, I don't want it to make it sound like I'm making an excuse for why I think Leon can
Yeah.
win because I'm such a Leon fan that obviously like I would love him to pull it off. And it feels a little bit like I'm trying to come up with reasons rather than say like what the actual reason is. But I have seen Leon Edwards fight so much better than he did on that night.
Mm-hmm.
And whilst I don't think Kamaru Usman was at his best, we've definitely seen him be better. He kind of fought how I expected him to against Leon Edwards. So for me, I when I think of it like that, I'm like the ceiling for Leon is far higher than we saw in that fight. Whereas for Usman, it's probably a little bit better. It wasn't his greatest performance, but still a pretty standard Usman performance, I thought. So I do put that down to the cardio because I think he can go skill for skill with
Mm.
Usman. Um, and again, we've seen Leon Edwards fight 5 rounds and never look as tired as he did in that second round. Like it was
Yeah,
pretty crazy to watch.
it was. And like every fighter on that card as well was gassing out. It's not like he was like an outlier. Um, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? The thing that really shocked me in that fight was I thought how much success Usman had in the clinch because I've always really regarded Leon Edwards as one of the elite clinch fighters in,
Yeah.
well, in the whole UFC. I was going to say in the division, but some of
Mhm.
the clinch work, the elbows off breaks, stuff like that really impresses me. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm just so intrigued. Has Usman taken enough time out? It was less than a year ago when he got knocked spark out. He had the hand injury for a while. We saw that as early as like I think the start of the year when he was at the event he runs out in Africa. And he had a
Yeah.
cast on still. He's nearly 36 years old. Uh, yes, fair enough, he's the favorite, but I feel like there are a lot of potential factors that should give hope to UK fans hoping for a British title defense.
Yeah, that's the thing that I keep trying to like get my head around is like, am I looking too hard for reasons why you could
Yeah.
pick Leon? Because at the end of the day, Usman is the favorite. Like he could easily go in there and produce another performance like he did last time out, where he doesn't get caught with a head kick
Yeah.
and he wins the fight quite convincingly. And that is a possibility that I think a lot of people may be forgetting. I say a lot of people, UK fans, maybe forgetting is that there are, the reason that fight is knockout of the year, comeback of the year, is because that doesn't happen to fighters like Kamaru Usman, and like 9 times out of 10 he wins that decision, and everyone goes, wasn't Leon's night. So that's a real possibility, which is quite scary.
It is, yeah. It's just a fascinating matchup. I'm gonna say that I'm backing Edwards to win, but who knows if he actually does. Yeah, I will say, just looking at the odds, I looked a while back when they first came out, and Edwards was a pretty heavy underdog then, and that line is closing. Usman's still a favorite, but the line has definitely closed. Yeah, and maybe because of some of those factors, I don't know. He is nearly 36, and he was knocked out, and he had a broken hand. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see. But well, before I move on to the co-main, any last thoughts on that fight, or we're good to move on?
I will pick Leon to get the job done, but if I was asked to put money on it, I wouldn't be very happy about doing so. I really do not know how that one's gonna go. But I hope that because of what happened last time out, we'll get probably the best fight of the 3 that they've had, because Leon, I think, will push it a little bit more, and obviously Usman kind of has a point to prove this time out. So I hope that it's a great fight regardless of who wins.
Absolutely, yeah. And yeah, just one more on that as well. The aura of invincibility on Usman has been shattered a bit as well. The man had never been knocked out before. And I'm so intrigued into the mindset, how Usman looks. I watched the countdown today, and he looked happy, fine. But I mean, he's lost his title that he had for so long. He's lost that. Obviously he had the loss outside the UFC, but never lost inside the UFC, and suddenly just everything gone in like a split second in Salt Lake City. So, it's a really fascinating one. I can't wait to watch it. I'm so excited for it. But
that is one thing I'll say. Sorry, just one final point. If I was gonna bet money on any UFC champion to get knocked out in the 5th round like that and come back and it not affect him, Usman would be right up there. Like, he just seems so solid mentally that there is a little bit of a concern. I think that maybe he might have come back too fast. He might have rushed that a little bit, but I don't think in his head that's going to play a factor. I would expect him to be mentally like 100% back to his best. So it's such a good fight.
And he's got that team, like what was it, the Onyx squad with Trevor Whitman, Justin Gaethje. Yeah. I mean, we just keep saying it's a great fight. I can't wait to see how it plays out. Talking to Justin Gaethje, co-main event, taking on Rafael Fiziev. I mean, it seems like a random placement to be on a UK card as a co-main, but I guess it's the UFC were thinking, okay, we're either going to have Holloway versus Allen or something like this, which really does fill that spot that losing Holloway versus Allen, the sort of the gap that was left by that. But yeah, it's a fight that's going to be pure violence. 2 elite strikers, violent strikers. Justin Gaethje is violence personified. Rafael Fiziev is an elite Muay Thai specialist who is really rounding out his game as well. When he first came in, I did have some sort of doubts of whether he was a complete mixed martial artist, but he's shown that. Like, he's looked sensational since signing to the UFC. Reading out some of the names: RDA, Brad Riddell, Bobby Green, Hanato Mukano, Marcia Casey. Like, and every single one of those fights, he's showing off more wrinkles. He can hurt people. He's got that insane flexibility we saw in the Jacasey fight. And he can go the full five rounds as well. So even though this is only a 3-round fight, even though these guys are like such violent finishers and whatever, I do kind of envision it going the distance, I feel like, because they're both fairly durable. And they both have the ability to match each other's tempo, I think, throughout the fight.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think if this was a 5-rounder, then I would expect a finish. Either just a cumulative damage from Fiziev or Gaethje eventually catching up with him and just wearing him down and landing something big towards the end. But yeah, 3 rounds is tough to imagine Gaethje being put away in 3 rounds. I know it's happened before with the Eddie Alvarez fight, but
Yeah,
that was a special knee, and that was a war for 3 rounds. I don't expect Rafael Fiziev to fight like Eddie Alvarez did on that night, so it's hard to imagine it. And I think Rafael Fiziev's footwork is too good to get caught with anything that would put him out. And we've seen he's got a chin anyway if you want to go to war with him. So
what do you think about the odds though? Again, this is the second time I've spoken about it, but Fiziev's a heavy favorite. Like Tabology, you've got him as a minus 240. Surely that's wide, right? Surely that's wide.
It's tough. I think that if you ask me what the most logical outcome is, I would say that Fiziev can outstrike him for the first 2 rounds and be, keep himself out of harm's way. So I think him being the favorite maybe isn't surprising. I think over 5 rounds, maybe Gaethje would be favorite. I think 3 rounds, it makes sense. I am surprised it is that far because Justin Gaethje has fought all of the top guys at lightweight. I know that Fiziev is kind of along with Beneil Dariush, the guys that are streaking on their way up to the top right now. But Rafael Fiziev's strength to schedule is ridiculous. That run is insane. But if you look at it like cold hard facts, top 15 contenders that he's fought, Justin Gaethje has been in wars with all of these guys, some of them like multiple times. So I would have expected it to be close, but I'm not surprised that Fiziev's the favorite.
Yeah, no, I agree with that assessment. It's just the fact that, the guys that Gaethje has lost to in his last 5 fights, right? He's lost to Oliveira, who submitted him, and Khabib, who submitted him. Both 2 of the best ground fighters, I suppose, the division's ever seen, let's be honest. Like, the submission skills of Oliveira and the wrestling of Khabib. Fiziev's not going to do that. He's going to attack Gaethje in his own realm of combat, which is on the feet. The 2 men are going to throw down. And it's just, I don't know, whenever someone fights Gaethje like that, I feel like it's just so much more of a coin flip because the man just, I don't know, he's got the chin. He's just got that dog in him. And he's going to throw down. He's going to make it an absolute war. If Fiziev can overcome him, that would be sensational. But the thing is, like, I don't know. I'm a huge Brad Riddell fan, don't get me wrong. But like they went strike for strike throughout the fight until that spinning wheel kick lands. Even RDA wasn't getting blown out the water until he actually was. Like I think maybe, like you say, a slight favorite status is fair, but I feel like just I don't know. Gaethje is a top 5 fighter and he's proven that so many times. Fiziev is still on the come up. Do we know if he can hang with the real cream of the crop, the upper echelon of the lightweight division, one of the deepest divisions in the UFC? Well, I mean, we'll find out on Saturday night.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, we have seen Fiziev be tested. Like I rewatched the Brad Riddell fight, and it really felt like he was trying to prove a point. Because he was nowhere near as mobile. He kind of stood and traded with him a lot. And the RDA fight, I think RDA won the 4th round on all of the judges' scorecards before the finish. So we have seen him lose rounds. I can just see that if this was a 5-round fight, I'd expect him to get drawn into some exchanges a lot more, like he did with Bobby Green. And obviously Justin Gaethje hits a lot harder than Bobby Green does. So then I would be a bit more concerned. But I can just see him having enough in the gas tank to win 2 rounds quite comfortably just by keeping on his toes and kind of picking Gaethje off from range. So I think if he fights like that, I think he can win this fight, like just by winning 2 rounds and staying out of the way of anything too big. But if Gaethje pulls it off, that the man, you want to talk about impressive runs in the UFC, the amount of killers that Justin Gaethje has fought since he arrived is ridiculous. So it's a real treat for him to be fighting in London. I think that's a great pick for this card.
And it was the right fight to make, wasn't it, as well? Like, perfectly matched. I really think there wasn't another. I mean, I'm thinking now that imagine Rafael Fiziev versus Dustin Poirier. That would be something special as well. But I think right now, for both men, this was the right fight to make. And yeah, like you say, it's a pleasure to have it on English soil.
Sure.
Moving on then, Gunnar Nelson has become a staple of these London cards. Now he was initially scheduled to take on Daniel Rodriguez, right? Rodriguez fallen out. Bryan Barberena has been very vocal about being active as of late. It looked almost like him and Ian Gary were in a fight one moment. But instead he takes on Gunnar Nelson on short notice. I don't know. Again, this is another one where just because I've got Tapology in front of me and it's showing these odds that Nelson's a minus 375. I feel like that's wide. Maybe because he's a hometown favorite again. But Barberena, he's a very solid, like, top 20 fighter. I feel like 25, top, yeah, something around that mark. And I feel like Gunnar is the same. Like, neither of them are necessarily, top 15 elite fighters, but they're on that sort of threshold. But I feel like they're in a very similar place. Gunnar's the older man, only by a year. But yeah, Barberena hits hard. He's relatively durable. I guess, yeah, if you look at his last loss, he was submitted by RDA. And Gunnar Nelson has one of the sort of best well, at least he initially did, right? He used to have an amazing submission game, but as of late, he hasn't shown it as much. But I would imagine that's the sort of route to victory that the odds makers are envisioning.
Yeah, I think that if you were talking skill-wise, I would consider Gunnar Nelson a pretty sizable favorite, kind of like what they've got. But I think that you've got a weird thing here where I think Gunnar Nelson sometimes underperforms to his skill level. And I would say Bryan Barberena is capable of overperforming his skill level because his skill is kind of, it's not like Gunnar Nelson's where you look at it and you're like, wow, he's such a maestro at jiu-jitsu. Whereas Bryan Barberena's skill is that he goes to war with people and he's still standing. So I think maybe you can downplay his skills a little bit because it maybe doesn't look as technical as what Gunnar Nelson does. But I kind of agree with you. I think that's really wide. I think this fight is pretty tough for Gunnar Nelson. Obviously, if he can get the fight to the floor, then you'd have him as a big advantage there. But kind of like you said, we haven't seen Gunnar Nelson be able to consistently do that. And then every now and then he produces a performance where I'm like, man, Gunnar Nelson is a problem for some of these welterweights. And then it kind of never seems to go anywhere after that. It kind of just dies down. So, yeah, I'm surprised he's that much of a favorite, honestly. I didn't know that.
Again, well, Tapology have their own sort of odds, so it might be a bit different on different books. But yeah, I don't know. And I was so... Even though he dominated Takeshi Sato in his last fight, he literally had the back for, I don't know what the control time stats are, but he was there for a long time. But Sato's someone who was like submitted 3 times in his last 3 losses or something like that. I don't know, like a submission specialist like Nelson really should be finishing that fight. And it really, I don't know. Yeah, it left me wanting to see a lot more from him. Maybe this is the fight for it. Obviously, Barberena stepping on a short notice. Like I said before, he was submitted in his last fight. I'd like to see Nelson, pick up a big win, get back into the, into a winning streak, put something together. Yeah, bear in mind his last 2 fights before Sato was Gilbert Burns and Leon Edwards. That's pretty wild if you think about it. I don't think I'd take us. Well, I guess maybe if I have a prediction, it would be Nelson via submission. But after the Sato fight, I don't know. I have no idea anymore. Like, where's his head at? Where's the game at? Maybe is his physicality still there? Is his, he's 34, going 35 in the next 5 months or so. Interesting to see. But Barberena will have that dog in him throughout the fight, and he'll push Nelson to the very limit if Nelson lets him sort of impose his game plan.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think I would, if I was kind of forced to predict the outcome, I would go for a Gunnar Nelson submission, but I wouldn't be massively confident in it because I feel like I would probably lean that way in most of his fights, and it doesn't happen in every one of his fights. So we'll see. But fair play to Bryan Barberena. That guy doesn't get the credit he deserves for bringing it every single time. I loved his little Legends tour. It was just a shame that RDA is like a legend, but also still kind of with it. So, but yeah, love Bryan Barberena.
Well, I think that's why he doesn't get the love, because he started knocking out or defeating all the fighters that people love.
I guess so.
But moving on, one fight, I'm actually dead looking forward to this one. Casey O'Neill is back, putting her undefeated record on the line against Jennifer Maia. These two top 10 women's flyweights. The women's flyweight division is on fire right now. Obviously, we just had the shake up at the very top with Alexa Grasso stepping up. Now we've got Shevchenko is a contender again. Manon Fiorot's there, Erin Blanchfield, but the one name that everyone keeps forgetting is Casey O'Neill. She was out for a minute because of the injury, but now she's back against a former title challenger in Jennifer Maia. Fun fight. Who are you backing?
I don't want it to just be complete bias in picking Casey O'Neill, but like, I'm really not sure on this one. Jennifer Maia is a really strange one for me to predict because I feel like I never know what I'm going to get. I feel like I'm never able to predict her performances correctly. I'm either a little bit underwhelmed or impressed and kind of surprised. So and she kind of operates in this division as only losing to the top people. So it's such a big jump for Casey O'Neill. I think she can probably do it, but I do think if Jennifer Maia is on her A game, then she wins this fight. But I just don't know where she is in the division because it seems like at one moment she looks like she's certified top 3 in the division at all times and then gets beat again and then makes her way back. And so I find it so hard to predict. And Casey O'Neill's been out for such a long time, but I'm obviously rooting for her. This would be a huge win if she gets it.
It would be. I really was certain Marina Moroz was going to defeat Jennifer Maia in that last fight, and Maia came out and the boxing was on point. She looked great. She dominated Moroz from pillar to post, and I rate Moroz quite highly. So that really impressed me. But obviously, prior to that, like you say, she's losing to Manon Fiorot, Caitlin Chookagian, win over Jessica Wright, and then lost to Shevchenko. I mean, those are 3 of the best of the division. Those 3 losses. Prior to that, she submitted another of Scotland's own, Joanne Wood, that first round armbar. That was wild as well. Do you remember that? Because I think Wood was like guaranteed a title shot, but she took the Maia fight instead, got submitted, and now she just got swapped out of the main card for Casey O'Neill. Bit of a changing of the guard, maybe. But at this stage in O'Neill's career, she needs these sort of tests. And Maia isn't a massive threat. She's probably not going to finish O'Neill. You know, that submission over Joanne Wood was a bit of a shock, it must be said. But she's a good all-round fighter. She held her own with Shevchenko. She even got that takedown that had people going wild at the time. But if O'Neill's able to impose a top game, that's where she really thrives. She's really good ground and pound. Can really sort of pick up these round winning, not so much moments but sequences when she's on top. It's more if Maia lets her, because I think she's actually like quite a skilled ground player, more so than she often shows. It's if she's able to neutralize O'Neill's top control, ground and pound and whatnot. And on the feet, I genuinely think after that last performance, Maia could at very least hold her own on the feet, if not probably come ahead with the boxing.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's why I find it so difficult, because the flyweight division, I feel like there is such a big gap between the very best and some of the other contenders. And Jennifer Maia is kind of in a middle point where she's lost to some of those people. But like you said, I was so impressed with her last performance. I'm like, maybe she is part of that like top 3 or 4 clique that don't seem to move. They are always there. So I don't really know. I think with a win here, then you have to consider her in that place. But she has lost to the division's best. And if Casey O'Neill's able to pull that off, it's a huge statement.
Yeah, it really is. Like you, I'm going to favor O'Neill, but I think it's a sneaky tough test. Like it's one that maybe you see the name on the contract when she's first offered it, and it's like, oh yeah, I'll fight Jennifer Maia. But then the more you look into it, it's like, this could be a tough one. But again, it's a very well booked fight because it will show if Casey O'Neill is part of this new wave of women's flyweight MMA. Moving on is a fight between two middleweights. We have the former title challenger Marvin, the Italian Dream Vettori, taking on Georgia's Roman Dolidze. Fights from Georgia are really having some success as of late, just coming off the win from Marab over Piotr Jan. Can Dolidze follow the path that Marab's sort of laying out and get a win here?
Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about a guy that really is like the acid test because he only loses to the very best guys. Marvin Vettori, man. Like, I have seen Marvin Vettori look so impressive, and then the fights against Izzy and Rob just wasn't competitive with those guys. Like, it's so tough to figure out where he sits. It's clear that he is not that super top level of middleweight just yet. But I do think he can beat the majority of the division fairly comfortably as well. So it's such an awkward place for him to be in. And obviously a huge opportunity for Dolidze to kind of capitalize on that and break through into that higher like pairing of the division. So I've been really impressed by Dolidze. Like, I mean, that win over Hermansson was incredible. I didn't see that coming at all. Like, I think Jack Hermansson's game is so underrated in the division, but that was a great performance. So I think he's capable of pulling something off like that again. But I would expect Vettori is quite a sizable favourite.
I can have a look. I imagine he is. Minus 275 on Topology. Which I think is fair, because the thing is, like, Jack Hermansson was beating Dolidze until Dolidze's one of those like fighters. There are a couple out there who have the grappler's equivalent of a one-punch knockout of Alex Pereira's left hand, isn't it? Because literally that Hermansson, it was a TKO in the end, wasn't it? Because he trapped the leg, took the back, and landed ground and pound from the top. So yeah, I don't know. Super interesting. I would favor Marvin Vettori for the full fight. I think he's the better fighter, but Dolidze might just lock something up, might submit him, might trap an arm or a leg. You just don't know. Vettori definitely has the better basics. He's so durable that no one's finishing him. I mean, some of the shots he took from Paulo Costa in that fight were outrageous. I think he can box the Dolidze up, give him just trouble throughout the fight, and maybe get submitted. I would not be surprised. But I think he's the better fighter overall, but there's a chance of a quick Dolidze submission, definitely.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where his biggest downfall has been in those fights with Rob and Izzy, is that he does everything really well, but he misses that one thing that he does exceptional that means he has an advantage. But he is so good everywhere that unless he's coming up against somebody like an Izzy or a Rob who has that one exceptional trait that he just can't compete with, I'd pick him over most guys in the division. So yeah, I'd expect Vettori to get done. Probably a decision. I think, again, maybe one of the things that has cost Vettori is his urgency in the past. Even though he comes into fight night like he's gonna start a fight at any moment, which is he's a character, so I'm sure it's gonna be fun.
A lot of characters on the top of that middleweight division. I just want him versus Sean Strickland one day. I know they're friends, but it just would be funny. Okay, so that's the main card of UFC 286. I think there's just two more fights that me and Kyle want to go over now. First is Jack Shaw making his featherweight debut, taking on Mr. Finland, Makwan Amirkhani. Jack Shaw's one of those fighters that just has all the potential in the world. Came up short against Ricky Simone. From what I've heard, he had a pretty horrendous weight cut. His weight cuts were getting worse and worse, so he's made the decision to move up. And he's taking on the man who, one of the most dangerous featherweights for the first round, if the fight hits the mat. Makwan Amirkhani, he's got anacondas, front headlocks for days, but also a horrendous gas tank. Jack Shaw is a decent favorite, rightly so, but similar to Dolidze, like, Amirkhani might just submit him.
Yeah, I feel like I think this actually, like now I'm thinking about it, I don't think it's far off. I think Makwan is right up there for fighters who've competed at the most events in the UK. Like
Yeah.
he's always on these cards, and you never know how it's gonna go. Like
Hmm.
I thought Mike Grundy was gonna ragdoll Makwan all over the map for 15 minutes, completely gas him out in a few minutes, and it would be a fight that everyone was like, that was ugly. Let's not watch that again. But he got it. He's such a strange fighter to watch, Makwan. I really don't know how to predict anything he
Hmm.
does, but I can understand Jack being a big favorite. I is makes total sense. I
Yeah.
feel like his fight IQ is so good that I don't think he's going to rush into anything in that first round and get caught like a lot of Makwan's opponents have.
He's really developed his game to this point where, I mean, like, I love how people call him the Welsh GSP because he's got boxing, he's got wrestling both in this game. Um, Interesting enough, I do think like Makwan appears to have worked on his boxing as of late. I remember in the Barboza fight, I think, yeah, when like he was definitely losing most of the striking exchanges, but he was holding his own at the same time. Um, Jack does like to wrestle, but I feel like that would be a mistake early on in the fight, like Mike Grundy found. Um, but if he can sort of shuck off Amirkhani's takedowns, force him into these boxing exchanges, I think if he defends maybe one or two takedowns from Makwan, then we're just going to end up with those two like having a boxing fight for the better part of it. And in that sort of realm of the fight, I favor Jack Shaw quite a bit. It will be interesting to see what he looks like 145 pounds. Um, but I mean, yeah, he's 5'8", Makwan's 5'10", almost the same reach. I think he'll do fine. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I mean, we've just seen Nathaniel Wood move up in weight and how well he's done at 145 pounds now that he's not killing his body. So I think I favour Jack to follow suit.
Yeah, for sure. The Nathaniel Wood kind of move up was has got me a lot more confident as
Mm.
well because I thought that seemed at first like a bit of a strange move until you hear him kind of go into detail about the weight cuts and
Yeah.
then you're like, well, Jesus, that sounds horrible. So and then the performances have been so good from him since
Amazing.
then. Like
Sensational.
I spoke to Jack and he was just like he was having to spend so much time dedicating himself to cutting weight instead of training. So even though he was able to make all of the sessions, he'd be so depleted by the
Yeah.
time he got there. So it's not even just the fight night; it's the whole training camp. Like you're just operating at 50% throughout the
Mhm.
whole time because you're so tired. So I do think it'll be good move for Jack. I think Makwan is like a decent opponent for a featherweight debut. He is
Yeah.
dangerous, even if it is just for the opening round. Um, but yeah, I'd expect Jack to get through this for
Me
sure.
too. It's a good buy. But yeah, like you say, like Nathaniel said the exact same thing as you. Like he's not able to fully train in the training sessions, so he goes into like the fight with what feels like a 50% like arsenal available to him.
Yeah.
He's only got half the weapons there. When suddenly you see him like fighting the Jordan fight, where he's like doing those trips from the clinch and tools that we have never seen him use before. I'm hoping we see the same with Jack because he had so much potential at 135 pounds. Maybe he's gonna be able to realize even more
Mm.
up at featherweight. I mean, there are a bunch of great fights in this card. Excited to watch Chris Duncan's debut, Sam Patterson making his debut. Makayev is back, admittedly against a sort of bit of a layup fight. Leroy Murphy taking on Gabriel Santos on short notice. He was initially meant to fight Nathaniel Wood. Wood, of course, picked up a bad injury and was forced out of that one. But the fight that Kyle, I believe, is most excited for is Christian Leroy Duncan, former Cage Warriors middleweight champion, making his UFC debut against Duško Todorović. Cracking fight, cracking fighter, so much potential. Talk to me about CLD.
Well, I mean, for a start, I'm super biased because I live in Gloucester. There's two MMA gyms in Gloucester. Well, there's a few more, but there's two main ones.
Mm.
And Christian Leroy Duncan is obviously from one of those gyms from Gloucester, and so obviously I'm going to be excited for that alone. It's a fighter from my hometown who's got a lot of hype around him and stuff like that. But the very first bit of kind of MMA work that I did was covering the Cage Warriors Academy, and they did their Grand Prix, and he went on to win the middleweight one. And it's been ridiculous.
Mm.
Like, I know that every single fight he's leveled up, and I'm sure that
Yeah.
if you asked him, he would say that, you know, every fight he's gone leaps and bounds. But you could see that he would be this good from way back then. Like, his striking arsenal way back then was ridiculous. It was clear he could do everything. The power that he has is scary. The cardio. This fight's going to be interesting because Duško is a really strong grappler. Like, when he gets top position, he is a nightmare to get off. So that's going to be a big question. But also, that was kind of the question throughout the whole of Christian Leroy Duncan's Cage Warriors run was, well, what if he gets taken down? And obviously, it didn't happen.
Fought and defeated Will Curry twice. You know, if people watch the UK regional scene, they'll know Will Curry is actually fighting for a title in Cage Warriors 2 weeks' time against Mick Stanton. So yeah, it's just credit to how good and how well-rounded a fighter he is. Trains with Mark Weir, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you can see that in his striking style as well. I was saying before to Kyle off camera that I was lucky enough to be there in person to watch his final Cage Warriors fight against Marian Dimitrov. I mean, the man just looked sensational, fighting against a wrestler from, I can't remember if it's from Georgia or somewhere around that region, a very well-respected wrestle-heavy opponent, and CLD just dominated. He looked sensational, landing crazy kicks, spinning back fists. There's a lot of hype around him, but rightly so. I don't know if we've had a middleweight coming up with as much potential as CLD since, I don't know, Bisping.
Yeah, I guess so. It's pretty crazy. The striking is just scary. Like, those last two Cage Warriors fights, which were both highlight reel finishes that were absolutely ridiculous. But just everything he throws looks like it's going to take your head off. And like it clearly lands with some pretty crazy power. Like, the Will Curry fights were really interesting because Will is also a really great prospect from the UK, and his grappling is very good, and he was able to really cause Christian Leroy Duncan some problems. But it's almost like once he got that kind of wrestling opponent that people wanted to see him face off with kind of off his back, and was like, okay, I've proved that I can do this, then it was like all bets were off. Because since then, the striking clinics that this man has put on have been outrageous. So I'm very excited. I think this is a tough matchup for a UFC debut. I really do. But I can't see a way that he doesn't get his hand raised. Just the explosiveness is just going to be a nightmare.
Todorović leans back with his hands down as well, chin right in the air. You've got to think at some point, the guy with the striking arsenal that CLD has is going to land. Just quickly looking down the rest of the card, Jake Hadley is back as well, taking on Malcolm Gordon. Could be interesting to see some of the, I don't know, fight week antics that go about, because Hadley and Makwan, big rivals, have this long-standing rivalry. You always see them go back and forth on social media, so who knows what might come out of that. Joanne Wood, as we mentioned before, is back against Luana Carolina. Carolina was knocked out by that spinning back elbow from Molly McCann. Can Joanne Wood do it again? Maybe. Jai Herbert, the Black Country Banger, is back, another former Cage Warriors champion, taking on Ludovic Klein in what will definitely be a sort of striking clinic from both men. Both have knockout power. They both are dangerous fighters. And then last of all, tough winner Juliana Miller taking on Veronica Hardy now, who is back after nearly 3 years out from the cage. Like I say, maybe missing like one or two big names, but overall this card, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's on at UK times, which is amazing. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too, man. I think, like I said at the start, I think that we got kind of promised some things that didn't end up happening. So that kind of left a little bit of a sour taste in people's mouths. But if you had told me like a year ago that we'd be getting a pay-per-view in the UK with a title fight and Rafael Fiziev versus Justin Gaethje, I'd be like, you don't need to tell me anything else.
Enough said.
Yeah, exactly. So we can't be too picky.
Exactly. Yeah, well, that's it. UFC 286. Gonna be a fun one. Thank you so much for coming on today, Kyle. I really do appreciate your time. Shout out, social media, anything like that, go for it.
Uh, Probably got some stuff coming out for UFC 286 over on VMTV. I've done a couple interviews. We've got Jack Shaw and Veronica Hardy up probably by the time this is out. And yeah, we'll be doing some previews on some fun stuff like that. And follow me on Twitter. I'll get you to put it in the
Yeah,
description
I'll
or
link
whatever.
it in the description. Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
easier.
All right, mate. Well, thank you very much. Should be a fun one, and we'll have you on again sometime for another preview.
For sure, man.
Absolutely. Sweet. All right then. Oh, subscribe to the YouTube channel as well.